Welcome to Politics Unusual. I'm Morgan McKay. We're a little more than 3 weeks away from the New York City primary election for mayor, which is why our first guest will be former City Comptroller Scott Stringer as we continue our candidate series. Next, we'll have on State Assemblyman Mike Tannousis as the end of the New York State legislative session is just around the corner, and then we'll check in on some top issues facing New Jersey residents. But first, the race for New York City mayor is heating up. A new Emerson College poll released this week shows former Governor Andrew Cuomo now holding only a single-digit lead over State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani in the final round of ranked choice voting. Coming behind Cuomo and Mamdani in the first round are City Comptroller Brad Lander with 11% support and former Comptroller Scott Stringer with 10% support among voters polled. Which brings me to my next guest. Former Comptroller Scott Stringer, thank you so much for being on. So let's just talk about that poll. What are your feelings?
Look, what goes up comes down, and you can clearly see that Andrew Cuomo is on the descent. We've doubled our poll numbers in the last week or so, so I'm feeling very good going into the last part of this, and I'm very excited to continue to go out and talk to voters, talk to you, Morgan, and make my case.
Now, you have an ad out right now that's gotten a lot of attention. We're going to play a clip and then talk about it.
Sure.
New Yorkers gotta hustle, juggle, multitask. Powering through is how we survive. So we deserve a mayor who can get our city back on track and keep this schmuck out of our business.
Now, you have a very lengthy political career. Tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're running for mayor.
Well, look, what you see in that commercial is what you get. You know, I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I grew up in Washington Heights. I love this city. It's part of the fabric of my being. I'm raising my two kids. They're going to public school, and I want them to have a life that I've had in New York City. So this drives me to get into this mayor's race, fix the corruption, create a government that is actually responsive to the needs of people, focus on housing, education, and making sure that the next generation of New Yorkers can thrive here. And that's what motivates me every day.
Now, you did run for mayor in 2021. You were accused of sexual misconduct. You denied those allegations, and you've sued for defamation. What do you tell voters, though, about that time?
I think they know. It was pretty clear that it was a political hit job in that race, and people understand it. You know, politics is a rough business, but I'm back, and people are now saying, imagine if you had won in 21, we wouldn't have had this Adams administration. So I'm very excited to talk about 2025 in the future.
Now, you have probably the most packed policy website I've seen so far in this race. You have a section for almost everything, from sanitation to building more playgrounds. And so we chose a few of the proposals, and we're going to talk about them.
Okay.
So starting first with affordability. So you propose fast-tracking housing projects, requiring some units on city land to be built larger as well, more bedrooms. How will you do this?
Well, look, we have 1,000 vacant properties in the city that the city owns, vacant land. Vacant land that we own means we can use that land to build affordable housing. And all the great mayors have built real affordable housing going back a very long time ago. We built public housing. We built the Mitchell-Lama housing program. We need to do this again. And we also have to build the housing that we actually need. You know, one of the problems that people have in this city is you come here, you're excited about living here, you have the first kid, and that's good, and you're in a small apartment. But the second child, you move out. People go to places like New Jersey, for God's sakes, and, you know, Texas and the mosquito state of Florida. We want you to stay here. To do that, we need 2- and 3-bedroom apartments, and I'm going to build those, and we're going to build the next generation of affordable housing that we desperately need.
Now, you also propose extending school hours to 4:30 p.m. To ease a burden on working parents. And you're also proposing something called the Tri-Share Child Care Fund that will split child care costs between the city, family, and employers. Explain, you know, what sort of reaction are you getting from businesses on this?
We talk about affordability. And so it's not just housing, it's also childcare. A lot of parents are being priced out of the city because they're paying huge amounts of childcare. So our plan sort of has a 3-way split to reduce childcare by 50%, no more than 7% of your income. And we ask employers to come in on this because their challenge is, can they retain their workforce? And one of the reasons why people are leaving is because they can't afford the education system. Extending the school day keeps more parents in the workforce, especially women. It also gives us an opportunity to help our kids, more tutoring, more athletics, more after-school programs. I mean, education and school building should be one and the same.
Now, when it comes to public safety, you're proposing hiring 3,000 new NYPD officers, and have a dedicated officer on every subway train. How long will it take to build back up staffing levels?
It's a very good question. So this is the serious challenge we have. We have more cops leaving the force after just a few years than are coming in. 60,000 people took the sanitation test. 8,000 took the police test. So part of what we have to do is rethink the quality of life of police officers, meaning we need predictive schedules. We need childcare because 20% of police officers are now women. And again, they're most likely to drop out of the workforce. And we have to make it a job that is aligned not just with policing, but also create separate mental health initiatives. So police are doing the policing work, and we have a mental health initiative in the subways as well to help the people who are suffering, the people who are homeless, but also the people who could cause harm to others or themselves.
Now, in 2020, you did call for defunding the police and for cutting the police budget. Do you feel like that rhetoric contributed to some of this low staffing levels at the NYPD?
No, look, my view, and remember, in 2021, there was a whole issue of policing and misconduct. People and issues evolve, but I believe now that we can do both. We can have a police force that is safe for everybody, and we can also have policing to deal with the problems of felony assaults and the violence that we've seen. But again, it has to be a multi-pronged approach. You can't just do policing without a mental health initiative, without also what I called for in 2020, directing resources to prevent kids from getting into trouble. That means extending the school day. That means giving kids the programs they need. Kids get in trouble after 3 o'clock. So let's keep them busy so that we can have a better, safer city.
Now, you also proposed something interesting called Quality Stat, and you want to have a new deputy mayor for quality of life that would oversee this. Explain more.
Well, look, the job of mayor is to just take care of some business. I mean, the trash is piled up all over the city. Where I live, sometimes the garbage is as high as 2 floors. The rats are walking upright. I mean, right? It is really ridiculous. They ask me, can I be Cuomo? And in all seriousness, people are starting to look around the city and say, it's dirty, we don't feel safe, where's the quality of life anymore? And so Quality Stat will be my way of holding commissioners and agencies responsible for the 311 calls you get. What do you resolve? How do we measure it? We did this with ComStat and 911 data. We have to now look at 911 and 311 data. When we do that, we'll learn what approach works.
Now, you also have a whole policy proposal on ethics and corruption, and that's not something I've seen from too many candidates. Explain why you want to focus on ethics and corruption, especially in this mayoral race.
Look, we're starting to accept that corruption is legal, and it's not. And corruption hurts services, costs taxpayers money, and people shouldn't be in politics to make money. And so we have a revolving door lobbying system. You come into city government for a couple of years, then you go cash out and lobby. Sometimes you're lobbying the very people who you supervised or managed, and the whole system has been broken. So I want to come up with I want my lobbying reform plan. We're going to have zero tolerance for corruption. People will come into this government because they want to serve, they want to do it for the right reasons.
And you've been in government for decades now. You worked as an aide to Jerry Nadler when he was a state assemblyman. You beat out Elliot Spitzer for the City Comptroller race in 2013. So what do you hope viewers know about you and know about your ability to govern?
Look, I think in every office I've held, I didn't just exist in this office. I made real change. In the Assembly, I was known as a crusading reformer who fought for tenants. As borough president, we did big things, 3 university expansions, created jobs, built housing, reformed the community boards, diversified them. As controller, we did some of the greatest work fixing our pension fund. And so you accumulate experience, but you also use that experience for your action plan. So when you say I have a website full of issues and plans, I do, because I want to be an activist mayor, but you can't accomplish things unless you know what you're doing. And I think voters should know when they make this decision that experience to get things done may be the most important moment in this city's history, given the dysfunction we've seen.
Well, I know you'll have a very busy next 3 weeks, and I look forward to watching you at the debate next week. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you very much.
Coming up next, the state legislative session is about to wrap up. We're checking in with the Republican conference about what priorities they're hoping to push through before the end of the year. Welcome back to Politics Unusual. There are only about 2 weeks left of the New York State legislative session. Democrats hold the majority in both the Senate and Assembly, but Republicans still have a few items they're hoping will be addressed before the end of the legislative year. So joining me now is State Assemblyman Mike Tannousis. Thank you so much for being here. So first, we're going to talk about masks. Governor Kathy Hochul included in the budget a penalty for people who commit crimes with masks on, but you've been saying it doesn't go far enough.
That's right, Morgan. For the past several months, we have heard the governor, we have heard members of the Democratic Party push forth on this mask bill that would basically hold people accountable in their minds if they were to partake in these types of actions while wearing masks. What we ended up getting in the budget, however, was an add-on charge, which is a B misdemeanor that could only be added if you are already facing an A misdemeanor or a felony. Well, I was a prosecutor for 10 years, for a decade, and I would be the first to tell you that no one that is actually facing an A misdemeanor or a felony, such as a burglary or a felony assault, is not going to care that they're actually facing an additional B misdemeanor, which is probably going to be the lowest charge on that docket. That bill will do nothing to deter people from trying to conceal their identities, and they were better off leaving it as a standalone charge that would have been utilized better and potentially would have prevented people from actually committing crimes while trying to conceal their identities.
And for our viewers, this all came about because during some of the Palestinian protests on college campuses, people were committing crimes with masks on, and police were having a hard time identifying them. The Republican conference also has a bill sort of related to this out there right now. You guys are calling for mandatory sensitivity training on anti-Semitism and institute reporting requirements regarding anti-Semitism complaints and disciplinary processes on college campuses. Explain more.
Yeah, you know, the problem with the anti-Semitic actions on campuses is that it's not just the students. You have also members of the faculty that are promoting this type of behavior. So it is time for us as a state government, if there are institutions that are promoting this type of behavior, you know, I have, even in our home communities, our local city schools, state schools, we have constituents that contact us because they're graduating and they're worried that their graduation ceremonies are going to be disrupted by protesters. It is completely inexcusable. So we call on our state government rather, to withdraw any type of benefit, financial funding, whatever you want to call it, from these institutions that continue to harbor anti-Semitism on their campuses. And I wish I could say it was only the students, but it's not. We all know that faculty, members of these institutions are actually promoting this type of behavior based on their actions while in the classroom and while on the campuses.
And as we enter into these last 2 weeks of the legislative session, I saw that your conference is also pushing for a bill to require voting ID when they're voting, for people voting, have some sort of identification. Explain to me more, why make this push now? There hasn't really been any voter fraud in New York, widespread verified voter fraud in New York. I guess, why make this push now?
Well, the push, we shouldn't have to wait for the fraud to happen in order to make this push. This is the type of push that we need to ensure that this type of fraud does not happen. And this is something that we believe has always been necessary. You could walk into any polling site in New York City, give them a name, nobody even checks to make sure that the individual is you that's voting. We've actually had certain instances on Staten Island, in my home borough, where individuals came in, and we later found out that it wasn't the individual that actually said who they said they were. It was prevented, but this is the type of bill that would prevent this type of fraud from happening. You go to any other country around the globe, and they take voting very, very seriously. They ensure with documents, other type of maneuvers that they employ to ensure that the right people are voting in their elections. And I don't think it's too much to ask to have that person provide an ID before they vote.
Well, it was so great to have you on, Assemblyman. I really appreciate it. I look forward to having you back on very soon.
Thank you so much. Great to see you.
Great to see you, too. Still to come, we're getting the pulse of the people on some hot-button issues, from banning tourist helicopters over big cities to cutting school sports programs due to budget cuts. How local residents are reacting when we come back. Checking in now with New Jersey residents on some legislative items representatives are considering. First, budget cuts are forcing many New Jersey schools to consider cutting or drastically reducing funding for sports programs. The news comes as many school districts across the Garden State have been forced to slash teacher and staff positions due to budget concerns. Here's what some residents had to say about the issue.
I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's a bad idea. I participated a lot in sports during my school years. It helped me stay focused on, what was important, schoolwork, all the, the academics, kept me out of trouble.
It's quite unfortunate for people who are into sports, but if they don't have the money for it, they should probably focusing on stuff that are like in STEM and all that.
I feel like there are other areas that could be cut, and it could be detrimental to our kids. I mean, it keeps them busy, it keeps them active, and then you're going to find more kids, getting in trouble instead of playing active sports.
Another hot-button issue right now, tourist helicopters. Members of Congress from New York and New Jersey have proposed legislation that would ban non-essential helicopter flights. Under the bipartisan proposal, helicopter flights would be prohibited over any city with a population of over 8 million people and a population density of over 25,000 people per square mile. Law enforcement and medical choppers would be excluded. It comes after last month's crash of a sightseeing helicopter in the Hudson River that killed 6 people. Here's what some local residents had to say.
Well, I think there's great benefits of helicopter tours, especially as a tourist to New York City. You get a special view of the city, but I also think there are lots of cons, like air pollution, of course, and then also the dangers.
It's just like we can hear one right now. It's just so constant. Perhaps if it was regulated and there were fewer, that would be great. But in a metropolitan place, it doesn't feel like it's a good fit.
I feel like people should be able to, look around with helicopters if they choose to. I feel like it's a private activity, and they shouldn't be inhibited from doing that.
If we keep it up, they bring more business to the city. So, but they need to be more safe for the community.
And we'll continue to check in with people across our area and get their thoughts on topics impacting their communities. Next up, we're going to test your knowledge of the tri-state region, so stay with us as we take a look at some political history. Now to this week in history. On May 26, 1978, Resorts International opened its doors as the first legal casino hotel in Atlantic City, New Jersey. The opening marked the beginning of legal casino gambling outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. Finally, tonight, we're testing your knowledge. Last week, we asked you what president's birthday celebration was held at Madison Square Garden in 1962. This was an easy one. President John F. Kennedy's birthday celebration was held at the 3rd Madison Square Garden on May 19, 1962. More than 15,000 people attended the gala, including numerous celebrities like Marilyn Monroe, who sang her famous rendition of Happy Birthday to JFK. The event was also a fundraising gala for the Democratic Party. Thank you to everyone who reached out. It was really nice hearing from you. Now to this week's question. Where in New York City was President George Washington inaugurated in 1789? Now, don't Google the answer, but if you know it or want to take a shot at it, go ahead and scan the code on your screen. That's going to take you to our website, fox5ny.com, where you can type in your answer, then check back here to see if you're right. That does it for this episode of Politics Unusual. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Morgan McKay. We look forward to having you back here next week.